The alarms were already screaming when Hale opened his eyes. For a moment he didn't know where he was. Bright red lights flashed across the metallic walls, and the ground vibrated like a beast breathing beneath him. His heart hammered, his throat dry, and a single thought cut through the confusion. The ship is under attack. He forced himself up. His legs trembled. His hands stung with the faint burn of recent impact, like he'd been thrown to the ground just seconds before waking. But the strangest detail wasn't the alarms or the shaking walls. It was the soft voice whispering his name. "Wake up." He turned, no one was there. The hallway was empty, silent except for the chaos vibrating through the ship. Yet he could swear that voice, gentle, melodic, and undeniably not human, had come from right beside him. Before he could make sense of it, a violent jolt slammed him sideways. He hit the wall hard, his ears ringing. The lights flickered, dimmed, then surged bright again. He tasted metal, blood. He wiped it away as footsteps echoed from around the bend. Fast, heavy, hurried. A group of armored humans sprinted past him, shouting orders. "Enemy boarding party on deck 4. Protect the princess. Evacuate all non-combatants. Froze. Princess here." He hadn't even known the diplomatic envoy had arrived. He was just a mechanic, an engineer who worked in the engine corridors far below the royal decks. People like him didn't even see royalty. He'd only heard rumors that the alien kingdom had sent their youngest princess to negotiate peace with humanity, that she was something rare, someone born with the ancient ability to sense thoughts, emotions, vibrations in the air. A seer, a mindlit, a symbol of hope in a galaxy drowning in war. The thought made his stomach twist. If the enemy was boarding now, it wasn't to ask for peace. Pushed away the dizziness and forced himself forward. He needed to get to the emergency pods. Survive. That's what people like him did. But the faint voice returned. Closer, clearer. Please. He stopped again. His skin prickled. His chest tightened. That voice came from inside his mind. He wasn't imagining it. And whoever it belonged to, she sounded terrified. Another explosion boomed somewhere above, followed by a piercing metallic screech. A wave of cold air burst down the hallway, pressure breach, stumbled back as smoke rolled around him like fog. And then, a shadow moved within it. Small, weak, falling. He ran without thinking. When he reached the shape, he caught her just before she hit the ground. A girl, no, an alien. Silver blue skin, soft luminescent markings flowing like constellations beneath the surface. Long hair that shimmered like strands of liquid gold. A ceremonial cloak torn at the shoulder, stained with soot. She looked young, fragile, dazed. Her eyes fluttered open, iridescent violet with star-shaped pupils. They pulled him in, strange yet impossibly gentle. "You came," she whispered. Froze, his breath caught. Her voice wasn't loud. It was like a thought pressed gently against his own. "Are you the princess?" he asked, his voice rough. She nodded weakly. "My name is Lyra of They're Hunting Me." As if summoned by her words, a distant roar shook the deck again, deeper, heavier, not human. Tightened his grip on her trembling shoulders. "I'm just a mechanic," he said. "You need soldiers, not me." Lyra touched his hand, light as a breath. "But I called for you." He felt it, electric warmth pulsing through his skin like the faint echo of her earlier voice. She had reached out, not just randomly. To him. Why? He didn't know, didn't have time to ask. An inhuman snarl echoed down the corridor. Close. Too close. Swallowed hard, the fear tasted bitter cold. But there was something stronger beneath it, something fierce, rising like a spark catching flame. He pulled Lyra to her feet. "Stay behind me." She stared at him, eyes wide, unreadable. "You would protect me." He didn't look back. "I'm not letting you die." He could feel her breath hitch, surprised, shaken. "Humans," she whispered, You shine even in darkness. The air thickened with the sound of claws scraping metal. The enemy was coming into view, dark silhouettes, twisted armor, glowing red eyes. His pulse thundered. He had no weapons. He had no armors. He had no plan. Just courage, reckless, stupid, human courage. He stepped forward anyway. Behind him, Lyra placed a trembling hand on his back. She breathed, "If you stand for me, I will not let you fall alone." The shadows lunged, and the hallway erupted into chaos. The shadows burst through the smoke like living nightmares. Didn't recognize their species. They were tall, armored in jagged plates that shimmered like obsidian. Their eyes glowed a furious red, and their claws clattered against the metal floor like knives skipping across stone. 3 of them, maybe more behind the haze. His instincts screamed at him to run, but Lyra's trembling fingers clutched the back of his shirt. That tiny touch rooted him like gravity. He couldn't leave her. He wouldn't. "Stay close," he whispered. One of the creatures snarled, a shrill metallic sound that made his teeth ache. It lunged first, claw raised. Grabbed the closest thing he could find, a broken pipe jutting out from a damaged wall panel. Its end glowed faintly hot. A plasma conduit must have ruptured. "Perfect." The alien swung, ducked and slammed the heated pipe upward with everything he had. The metal sizzled as it carved into the creature's shoulder. It screeched, high, furious, and stumbled back, its armor cracking open like stone under pressure. Blinked. He hadn't expected to hurt it. Not like that. But another monster rushed forward. This one moved faster. Too fast. Its claws slashed across his arm. Pain exploded. He cried out and staggered, nearly dropping the pipe. Lyra gasped behind him, "You're hurt." "I'm fine," he lied through clenched teeth. The cut burned deep. Warm blood dripped across his fingers, but he couldn't afford to think about it. Not yet. The aliens circled them, hissing in some guttural language he didn't know, but he understood the meaning well enough. Kill the human, take the princess. The third creature lunged straight for Lyra. Didn't think, he didn't breathe. He threw himself between them, ramming his shoulder into the monster's gut with a force that shocked even him. It skidded back several feet, smashing into a support beam with a metallic clang. Felt something crack in his shoulder. Pain flared hot and sharp. Lyra cried. The first creature recovered and charged again. The second followed. The hallway trembled under their steps. Tightened his grip on the heated pipe. His arms shook, his lungs burned. He couldn't win this. He knew it. But he also knew something else. Something simple, stubborn, and beautifully human. Some people are worth standing for. Even when you stand alone. He lifted the pipe, and then the air around him rippled. Warm. Electric. Alive. Lyra's hand hovered near his back, glowing softly with a strange violet light. "What are you doing?" he gasped. "Sharing strength," she whispered. "Borrow mine just for a moment." Before he could respond, a wave of energy rushed through him. His pain dimmed. His exhaustion faded. His vision sharpened. He felt taller, steadier, unbreakable. The creatures sensed it too. They hesitated, red eyes narrowing. "Didn't." He launched forward. The pipe blazed as he swung it in a wide arc. It struck the nearest alien across the jaw, snapping its head sideways with a crack that echoed down the corridor. The second creature tried to flank him, but spun, planted his foot, and drove the glowing pipe straight into its chest. Armor shattered. Sparks flew. It collapsed with a choking roar. Gasped, stunned at his own strength. "What, how?" Lyra lowered her hand from his back. She looked paler now, breathing hard, but her gaze was steady. "You humans fight with your hearts first," she whispered. "I only gave you enough to help your body keep up." The third creature shrieked and lunged in fury, claws outstretched. "Raise the pipe." But this time, Lyra stepped in front of him. Her eyes flashed blinding violet. A shockwave burst outward like a collapsing star. The monster was thrown across the hall, smashing through the wall panel and disappearing into the dark chamber beyond. Silence. Smoke drifted upward. Sparks crackled from broken wires overhead. Panted, his chest heaving, his arms trembling. Lyra turned to him, and for a moment their faces were close enough that he could see tiny flecks of silver swirling in her eyes like galaxies. "You saved me," she said softly. "You saved me too," he answered. Her voice trembled. "No, you don't understand. Those hunters, they don't stop. More will come. And every moment I stay alive, the galaxy shifts." He frowned. "What does that mean?" Before she could answer, the deck beneath them shuddered violently. A deep, thunderous boom rolled through the ship, like something massive had latched onto the hull. Lyra's eyes widened in fear. "They've brought a breaching crawler." "They what?" She grabbed his hand with urgent strength. "It drills through battleships. If it reaches the royal chamber, nothing will stop them." Swallowed hard. This wasn't just a skirmish. This was a hunt. And it wasn't going to end. Lyra squeezed his hand. "Will you keep running with me?" His pulse thundered. He didn't want to be a hero. He didn't want to get killed. But he looked at her shaking hands, her terrified eyes, her desperate hope. And the answer rose from deep within him. "Yeah," he said, "I'll stay with you." Another boom shook the deck. The hunt had only begun. The hallway groaned under the weight of the ship's trembling. Smoke curled through the vents, thick and choking, clinging to their lungs. Sparks rained from the ceiling like falling stars, and somewhere deep below, the engines groaned in protest. Stumbled, gripping Lyra's hand. Her touch was a lifeline, steady and warm, even as the corridors warped with explosions. "We have to reach the evacuation pods," he said, his voice rough from shouting over the alarms. "That's the only way off this deck before the breaching crawler." He didn't finish. The thought of the massive machine drilling its way through the hull made his stomach churn. Lyra's gaze stayed fixed ahead, her star-shaped pupils scanning the chaos with unnerving calm. "There's another way," she said. "A maintenance shaft behind the main reactor. It leads straight to the secondary pods. We could slip through." Narrowed his eyes. "Sounds like a crawl through death traps." She gave a faint, almost sad smile. "Sometimes death traps are safer than waiting for the enemies to reach you." He gritted his teeth. There was no arguing with logic that made sense only to her alien mind. As they sprinted down the next corridor, a low hum began vibrating through the floor, a deep, rhythmic sound that set every nerve on edge. Froze. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Lyra nodded, her hand tightened around his. "It's the breaching crawler, much closer than I thought. We have minutes, maybe less." A sudden explosion shook the wall beside them. Debris rained down, pinning Sleg. Pain shot through his calf, sharp and unforgiving. He let out a groan and dropped to his knees. Lyra cried, her violet eyes wide. "We have to move." He gritted his teeth and dragged himself forward. Her hand stayed with his, guiding him, urging him. Finally, they reached the maintenance shaft, a narrow, metallic tunnel barely big enough for one human. Smoke swirled around it like a living thing, glanced back. The hallway was a furnace of fire and sparks, shadows moving within the chaos. "Go," he said, pushing her gently forward. "I'll make sure we're not followed." Her eyes widened. "No, we go together." Shook his head. "You're the princess, they're after you. I'll slow them down, go." Lyra hesitated, then did something that made his heart stop. She placed both hands on his shoulders and pressed her forehead to his chest. The air shimmered between them, a quiet, unspoken energy that warmed him and steadied his shaking limbs. She whispered, voice trembling, "I don't care about the rules, I don't care about danger. Stay with me." His pulse pounded so loud he thought it might echo in her mind. For a moment, the world narrowed down to her hand in his, to the glow of her eyes in the smoky darkness. He didn't argue, he didn't hesitate. He climbed in beside her. The shaft was tight, metallic, and suffocating. Sparks flickered from the walls as they crawled, their movements slow and awkward. His arm throbbed from the earlier claw strike, every motion reminding him of his own fragility. But Lyra's presence, steady, fearless, gave him a strength he didn't know he had. Halfway through the tunnel, they heard it, a scraping, grinding sound, deeper than anything human, the breaching crawler. It was moving faster than expected, cutting a path toward them like a predator hunting prey. Stomach turned, the hatch at the end of the shaft looked impossibly far. "We're not going to make it," he muttered, panic creeping in. Lyra reached out, placing a hand over his wounded arm. "We will," she said softly. "Together we will." Another scrape reverberated through the tunnel. Felt the vibration beneath his knees, like the machine's anger was pressing against the hull itself. "Just a little further," Lyra whispered. "I can sense the secondary pod deck. It's right ahead. We have to hold on." Pain and fear collided inside him. Every instinct screamed run, hide, surrender, but he kept moving, hand in hers, step by trembling step. Finally, a faint glow appeared ahead. The shaft ended, opening onto a maintenance platform. Relief surged through him, sharp and sudden. But then, a shadow moved at the far edge of the platform. Not human, not. The enemy had followed them into the shaft. Froze, pain, and terror mixing into a bitter taste in his mouth. Lyra stepped forward, her body glowing faintly as her hands lifted, shimmering energy radiating outward. "We fight," she said simply, her eyes locking onto his. "Together." Swallowed hard, gripping the hot pipe he had saved from earlier. Despite his fear, despite his wounds, a strange calm settled over him. He realized with shocking clarity that he wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for her. And maybe, in some small, impossible way, for himself too. The shadow lunged. Tightened his grip, Lyra's glow flared. The tunnel erupted in light and sound. Swung the heated pipe with everything he had. Sparks flew as it connected with the shadowy alien before him, but the creature didn't falter. It only hissed, swiping again with claws sharper than knives. Lyra's glow flared brighter, wrapping around like a shield. For a moment he could feel her strength inside him, her alien energy pulsing, steadying, urging him forward. "You're stronger than you know," she whispered, her voice cutting through the chaos. Gritted his teeth. "I don't feel strong." "You are," she replied softly, "because you fight for something bigger than yourself." Her words struck deeper than any blow he had taken. For the first time, he realized what it meant to be human in a galaxy of alien wonders. Fear was natural. Courage was choosing to act anyway. He swung again, connecting with the alien's side. It shrieked and staggered back, giving them a precious moment. "Pod deck's just ahead," Lyra called, pointing toward a hatch illuminated by soft green lights. Dragged himself forward, ignoring the burning in his leg and the throbbing pain in his arm. Every step was agony, but he refused to slow down. Lyra's hand remained locked in his, steadying him like an anchor. They reached the hatch, fumbled with the controls, shaking so hard the buttons felt slippery under his fingers. "Let me help," Lyra said, placing her glowing hands over his. Together, they activated the hatch. It hissed open, revealing the evacuation pod deck beyond. Rows of small escape vessels waited, some already launching an emergency protocol. "Go get inside," shouted. But Lyra hesitated, her eyes scanning the corridor behind them. The alien was recovering, its red eyes gleaming with fury. "I can't leave you," she said softly. Blinked, he opened his mouth to argue, but she placed a finger gently on his lips. "No arguments, just trust." Before he could react, the alien leaped. Time slowed, lunged to block it, raising the pipe like a shield. Pain exploded across his chest as the creature's claw raked through him. He stumbled, blood spilling onto the deck. Lyra screamed, energy flaring outward like a living aurora. The alien screeched and recoiled, but collapsed to his knees, his strength failing. "You idiot," Lyra cried, rushing to him. "Stay with me." He looked up at her, blinking through the haze of pain. I can't leave you." Her hand glowed, brushing his wound. Then don't, just breathe, I'll carry you if I must. His chest heaved, every breath was fire. Every heartbeat screamed agony. Yet in that moment he felt something stronger than pain, something that surged through him, raw and untamed, purpose. He had a choice, stand and fight or surrender and die. He chose to stand. With Lyra's energy reinforcing him, he staggered to his feet. The alien hesitated, confused by his resilience, swung the pipe again. Sparks showered the deck, the heat scorching both human and alien alike. With a final, desperate blow, he struck the creature's head, sending it sprawling across the floor. It lay still. Silence returned, broken only by the hiss of the pod systems. Leaned heavily against Lyra, trying to catch his breath. Blood streaked his uniform, sweat and grime clinging to his face. He felt like every muscle in his body had been shredded. Lyra's hands were warm on his chest. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved me." Shook his head weakly. "No, you saved me too. Not just now, all of this. You gave me strength I didn't know I had." Her violet eyes softened. Humans are strange creatures, fragile, yes, but capable of shining through the darkest of places. That is why I called to you. He blinked, trying to process her words, and then a sudden roar shook the deck. The breaching crawler, they weren't out of danger. Not yet. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the nearest pod. "We move. Now, every second counts." Staggered forward, leaning on her for support. His wounds burned, his lungs burned, but he refused to falter. Each step was a promise. He would protect her no matter the cost. As they reached the pod, looked back. Smoke and fire billowed through the corridor. Shadows of alien hunters loomed, the threat far from over. But for a fleeting moment, he realized something profound. He was not alone. Not while she was with him. Not while he could choose courage over fear. The pod door hissed closed. The engines began to hum. Lyra's glowing hands hovered over the control panel, guiding them through the launch sequence. Sank to the floor, exhausted beyond reason. She knelt beside him, her eyes soft with worry. "You did more than survive," she said quietly. "You chose to shine. That is what makes humans remarkable." Tried to speak, but only a rasping laugh escaped him. Pain, relief, fear, and awe collided in one chaotic mess. She smiled faintly, brushing her fingers through his hair. "Rest now, you've earned it." The pod lifted off, shaking violently as it escaped the hull. Below, the ship burned, a twisted monument to a battle barely survived. Stared at the stars streaking past the viewport. He thought about everything that had happened. The creatures, the crawler, the unbearable pain, and Lyra, who had given him strength when he had none. And he realized something terrifyingly simple. He would do it all again. Without hesitation. Because courage was not about avoiding fear. It was about facing it. Together, the pod surged into the darkness of space, carrying them both away, but the danger was far from over, and knew, deep in his chest, that the choices he made next could cost him everything. The pod rocked violently as it entered the upper atmosphere of the sector. Sparks danced across the control panel and gritted his teeth, gripping the sides of his seat. Pain lanced through his arm and leg, every movement a reminder of the fight they had barely survived. Lyra sat beside him, her glow dim but steady. Her eyes scanned the controls, her delicate fingers moving over alien symbols and buttons with confidence born of experience. Yet behind her calm exterior could sense the tension, a storm barely restrained. "They're not done," she said softly, almost to herself. "The boarding party, they won't stop until I'm back in their hands, and the breaching crawler, it will follow us if it can." Swallowed, his throat dry. "Then we keep moving, we stay ahead, that's all we can do." Lyra looked at him, her gaze piercing. "You've already given me so much, I don't know if I can ever repay it." He tried to smile, but the pain made it falter. "You don't have to repay anything, you just survive, that's enough." For a moment, silence fell between them. The pod hummed, engines straining against gravity and damaged shields. Outside, stars streaked past as they raced through space, a blur of silver against black. And then the sensors blinked, a warning red, insistent, impossible to ignore. Contact, Lyra whispered. They've followed us. Stomach twisted. He peered at the display. A massive shadow loomed behind them, another ship, black as void, jagged and alien. Faster than anything human tech could match. They're not giving up, he muttered. No, Lyra said grimly, and if we're caught, we're done for. The pod jolted as the alien vessel fired, energy beams slicing through space. Sparks rattled across their viewport, gripped the edge of his seat, knuckles white. Hold on, Lyra commanded, her voice steady despite the fear. She tapped the controls, and the pod darted sideways, narrowly evading the first blast. His heart pounded. He knew they were fast, but only barely ahead of death. Every second felt like an eternity. Suddenly, the pod shuddered violently. Alarm screamed, was thrown against the wall, hitting his head. Stars exploded in his vision. Lyra cried, her hands glowing as she stabilized the pod. You okay? He groaned, pushing himself upright. I think so, you. Her eyes met his, and for a fleeting heartbeat, all the fear, chaos, and exhaustion melted away. She was alive. They were alive, and somehow they had each other. But the moment passed. Another blast rocked the pod and realized the enemy wasn't just chasing. They were hurting them, forcing them toward a narrow asteroid field. They're trying to trap us, he said, his mind racing despite the pain. We need a plan. Lyra's jaw tightened. There's a station nearby, abandoned. It's our only chance, but we'll have to navigate the field, and I don't know if it can survive a direct hit. His eyes narrowed. Then we make it survive. Her gaze softened, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You're reckless, she said, though there was admiration in her tone. Maybe, he admitted, but you've got me, remember. She laughed softly, a sound like wind over crystal towers. Yes, I do, but don't think I won't scold you when we survive. He smirked despite himself, pain lancing through his chest. Scold me later. Right now, let's survive. The asteroid field loomed ahead, jagged rocks twisting like skeletal fingers. Stomach churned at the sight. One wrong move and they would be crushed, or worse, an easy target for the alien ship behind them. Hold tight, Lyra said, energy glowing around the pod. I'm doing all I can to stabilize the shields. You have to trust me. Gripped her arm. I do. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Something fragile and dangerous. Something that could only exist when facing death side by side. The pod dove into the asteroid field. Rocks blurred past like deadly comets. Energy beams sliced the void around them. Every movement, every twitch of the controls was a gamble. But didn't flinch. He was hurt, exhausted, bleeding, but alive. And for the first time in his life, he realized that courage wasn't just about fighting monsters. It was about protecting someone, even when it meant risking everything. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was fighting for her. And he would keep fighting, even if it cost him everything. The pod shuddered violently again. A massive asteroid loomed ahead, larger than any they had seen. Held his breath. Lyra's hands glowed fiercely. Brace yourself, she shouted. The pod slammed into the asteroid's surface, skidding dangerously across jagged rock. Sparks and dust filled the air, gritted his teeth, pain and fear mixing in his chest. And through the chaos, he saw her eyes, bright, determined, unshakable. He knew in that moment that no matter what came next, they were in this together. The pod skidded across the jagged surface of the asteroid, sparks flying from its damaged hull. Gritted his teeth, feeling every jolt reverberate through his broken arm and leg. Pain clawed at him, sharp and relentless, but he refused to scream. Not now, not when Lyra's life depended on him. She gripped the console, her violet glow illuminating the cramped interior. The station is just ahead, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. If we can reach it, we can hide, repair, and maybe escape. Nodded his jaw tight. Just keep us alive, Princess. Don't call me that, she muttered, but a faint smile softened her harsh tone. Suddenly, the enemy ship reappeared, faster and closer than ever. Its energy cannons flared, blasting chunks of asteroid away and sending shards rattling against their pod. His heart hammered in his chest. Damn it, he yelled, clinging to the seat. We can't outrun them forever. Lyra's glow intensified, wrapping around the pod like a shield. Then we fight differently, we use the terrain. Blinked, watching her hands trace patterns over the control panel. Energy pulsed outward, making the pod's hull hum. The alien ship fired again, but this time, the blasts ricocheted off the pod's reinforced shields. You're amazing, he breathed, awe cutting through his pain. She glanced at him, eyes softening. You're the reason I can keep fighting, don't forget that. Before he could respond, the pod hit a sudden drop, a chasm between two massive asteroid cliffs. They plummeted for a heartbeat, the void stretching endlessly below them. Gripped the sides, his stomach in knots. You're not dying here, he muttered, more to himself than to her. The pod slammed onto the far side with a screech of metal. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and the enemy ship closed in. Felt something inside him break, pain, fear, exhaustion, but he pushed it down. He had one choice, protect Lyra. The asteroid's jagged terrain became a deadly maze. Lyra expertly maneuvered, energy flaring to buffer every hit. Helped when he could, leaning over controls and holding the pod steady with his remaining strength. Then the alien ship unleashed a new weapon, a massive energy harpoon aimed directly at the pod. Eyes widened. If it hit, they'd be ripped apart instantly. I can't move it in time, he shouted. Lyra's eyes blazed. I will, she said, energy crackling around her. Her hands hovered over his again and warmth spread into his chest. His pain dulled, replaced by a surge of strength. Together, they shifted the pod at the last possible moment. The harpoon struck the asteroid behind them, embedding with a deafening crash. Gasped, that was close. Lyra nodded, her glow fading. Too close. A silence fell, broken only by the groaning of the damaged pod. They were barely alive, the enemy ship circling like a predator, waiting for a mistake. His bloodied hand brushed against hers. I can't lose you, he said softly, voice cracking. You won't, she whispered, her eyes holding his. Because I won't let you, not now, not ever. For a moment, time seemed to pause. Amid the chaos, the fear, the relentless danger, there was only them. Breath mingling, hearts pounding, a fragile connection forged in the crucible of survival. But reality returned violently. The pod shuddered again. The alien ship fired, and a direct hit sent them skidding across a rocky ledge. Slammed into the wall, pain exploding through his side. Lyra cried. He looked up, gritting his teeth. I'm okay, he lied, though every breath burned. Then she gasped. The pod's shields flickered. One more hit, one more mistake, and they would be torn apart. His mind raced. He knew what had to be done. Lyra, he said, voice steady despite the trembling of his body. I can distract them. You get the pod to the station. I'll hold them off. Her eyes widened, violet orbs shimmering with panic. No, you'll. I don't care, he interrupted. I'm not letting them take you, not ever. Her hands glowed faintly, brushing his cheek. You don't have to do this alone, she whispered. Shook his head. I choose this, I choose you. Before she could protest, he leapt from the pod, sprinting across the asteroid's jagged surface. Energy blasts tore past him, shards of metal and rock spraying in every direction. His body screamed, every step agony, but he didn't stop. The enemy's attention shifted instantly. Guns, energy beams, claws, all focused on him. He ran, dodged, and fought with every ounce of strength left in him. Inside the pod, Lyra's hands glowed brighter than ever, guiding the vessel through the rocky maze, tears streaming down her face as she watched him risk everything. Felt his life hanging by a thread. Pain, fear, and adrenaline surged through him. And yet, even here, even now, he felt alive in a way he never had before. For Lyra, for courage, for humanity. The asteroid field roared around him, and somewhere deep inside made a promise, no matter the cost, he would shine. Even if it meant giving everything. His legs burned, his lungs screamed. Every inch of his body throbbed with pain, but he didn't stop running. The alien ship pursued relentlessly, its weapons tearing chunks from the asteroid around him. Sparks and smoke twisted in the void, a deadly dance of light and shadow. And yet, through it all, he kept moving. He wasn't running for himself. He was running for Lyra, for the hope she carried, fragile and irreplaceable, for the truth that humans, small, frail, and fallible, could rise above fear when it mattered most. The pod surged ahead, guided by Lyra's glowing hands. She kept her focus on the station now looming in the distance, a derelict structure half buried in asteroid rock, its panels scorched and warped. "Almost there," she shouted over the chaos, tears streaking her luminous face. Sighs locked on her through the gaps in the jagged rocks. He clenched his fists. "Hold on, I'm coming." The alien ship fired again, dove behind a jagged boulder, its claws snapping just inches from his shoulder. He rolled, struck, pushed forward, each step a battle against both pain and exhaustion. And then he saw it, the perfect opening. The alien vessel had focused entirely on him, leaving the path to the station largely unguarded. He risked everything, sprinting into the open, firing off anything he could grab at it, rocks, debris, sheer willpower. The creature hissed, confused and enraged. Inside the pod, Lyra's glow flared brighter. She guided the vessel through the station's airlock, the doors creaking under the strain. Reached the platform just as the pod landed, staggering across the surface, bloodied and bruised, but alive. Lyra rushed out, wrapping her arms around him. She cried, her voice shaking with relief and fear. He sank to his knees under her weight, pain radiating through his body. Yet when he looked up at her, he didn't see pity. He saw admiration, respect, something deeper, something that warmed his soul like sunlight piercing the void. You did it," she whispered. "You survived, you saved us both." Shook his head, gasping. "No, you saved me too. You gave me strength when I had none." Her violet eyes softened. "That's what humans do, fragile, scared, and still, shining when it counts." He laughed weakly, a sound raw with exhaustion and wonder. "Never thought anyone would call me shining." Lyra smiled, brushing a trembling hand across his cheek. "You did more than shine. You chose courage over fear. You chose to protect, to fight, even when it could have cost everything. That is the truest light." The two of them stood there in the ruined station, the wreckage of their fight strewn around them. The alien ship lingered in orbit, wounded but still menacing, a reminder that danger never fully disappears. Yet in that moment felt something he had never experienced before, pride. Not for glory, not for recognition, but for the simple human act of courage. I don't deserve this," he murmured, voice hoarse. "Perhaps," Lyra said softly, "but that is precisely why you do. You do not seek reward, you act because it is right. That is what makes you human." He looked at her, and in her glowing eyes he saw a reflection of everything he had risked, everything he had survived. Fear, pain, exhaustion, all of it paled against the bond they had forged in the chaos. I can't promise I'll always be strong," he admitted, his voice quiet. "But I will always try for you, for this moment." Lyra cupped his face, her touch gentle but firm. "I don't need perfection, I need heart, and you have more heart than anyone I've ever known." For a heartbeat, the galaxy outside disappeared. Stars, explosions, danger, all of it faded. There was only them. Only trust, bravery, and the fragile, unbreakable bond that had formed between a human and a princess of. Then the distant hum of the alien ship reminded them that the fight was never truly over. Yet neither flinched. They had faced the impossible and survived, together. Took a deep, ragged breath, letting the pain settle into something like resolve. Then, let's make sure they never catch us again. Lyra nodded, her glow flickering softly over his bloodied form. "Together," she said. And in that moment, amid the ruin, the danger, the relentless chaos of war, something undeniable shone. Human courage. Fragile, reckless, and unstoppable. A light that burned brighter because it was chosen, not given. Stood, steadying himself against the edge of the platform, he looked at Lyra and smiled, exhausted but alive. "Let's go home." She took his hand, and for the first time, it felt like the universe itself had paused to watch them. Because courage, true courage, shines. Even in the darkest of space. Even at the cost of everything.